All right, Mob, good Monday morning and welcome to the first, inaugural edition of Coach Talk. I am your host, the Chad Bullock, along with the man, the myth, the legend, and the coach. The reason why it's named Coach Talk, Coach Bo. This will be a weekly series that we do on Monday mornings. We're going to talk coaches, new coaches in all the big conferences. It'll be a 3-week series airing Monday mornings. First week, SEC. Second week, Big Ten. Week 3, Big 12 and ACC. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. We'll start off with LSU, Coach Bo, and Lane Kiffin, the new sheriff in town in the SEC. What you got?
Well, first of all, let me go ahead and define some terms you're going to hear when we're on the show is how we're going to look at some of these coaches. When you talk about coaches, there's guys that are grunts, and then there's guys that are gurus, and I don't mean those in any negative way. What I mean is these are coaches who basically take two different paths. Okay, the grunts are the guys that they probably played somewhere, but then they stayed on as a GA, and then maybe they got on as an assistant somewhere, and then they've worked their way up, and it's taken them, 15, 20, 25 years to get that first head coaching job. Or as we'll see in a number of these guys, start off in high school, and then they get a GA job somewhere, or they get on somewhere as an analyst, or they end up starting off at somewhere like Wisconsin Whitewater. No offense to Wisconsin Whitewater, but that's not exactly major college football. Or they're coaching somewhere in junior college, and then they work their way up the ranks. Those are your grunts. Then you got your gurus, the guys that are identified early on, kind of bright, forward thinking kind of guys, kind of innovative kind of guys. And, the guys that I would place in that guru category, I mean, guys that have been in head coaching for a while. These guys that get fast tracked, and they start off at big programs, and then before you know it, they're at a medium sized program, and then they got a coordinator job, and then a bigger coordinator job, and then within 5 to 7 years they're a head coach somewhere. And usually a lot of times those guys will have some big time success. So what we're going to do is we're basically going to lay out the facts of all these coaches, and then we're going to look at them, and we're going to label them either grunts or gurus, and we're going to look at just some of their success, and they obviously have gotten to where they are because they have been successful. So you want to start with the LSU and Lane Kiffin. Well, we all know the saga that's been Lane Kiffin, and if you've paid attention to Lane Kiffin, he was a very immature, snot-nosed brat. That's what I thought of him back in the days when he got the Raiders job. Okay, he's that type of guy that he was a guru kind of guy. He didn't start at the lower levels. He didn't pay his dues, so to speak. He was put in the positions he was put in early on in his career because his father was Monty Kiffin, the great defensive coordinator for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who invented the Tampa 2 defense. So when Lane Kiffin first started coaching, I just looked at him as just a snot-nosed punk guy that the only reason he was there was because of daddy. And I think a lot of people felt that way too, especially I believe he was 30 or 32 years old and got the Raiders job. And that was an absolute disaster. And then he goes to Tennessee, stays for a year. That was a disaster. He left in a terrible way. Then he goes to USC and gets fired on the tarmac. That's how that worked out. And then he goes to the Nick Saban Home for Wayward Coaches. And that is what changed his life and changed his career as a coach. That is where he started to take coaching serious, I think. I think before it was all kind of luck and charm, right? But now you look at the way he's developed, those butt chewings that Nick Saban gave him on the sideline, the time he spent in those analyst rooms, the time he spent there with Nick Saban, with all those quality coaches that came through the Alabama program, are really what's helped Lane Kiffin. And I think, in my opinion, Lane Kiffin is a top 5 coach in college football. Yes, no, he has not won a championship. But just his innovation, the way he coordinates his offense, the way I've watched him go from what I thought he was 10, 12, 15 years ago to where he is now. I mean, he's really transformed himself as a coach. And now you watch his teams play. They're good on the lines of scrimmage, the run game, better in-game management, better decision making, and a lot of that just very simply comes from Nick Saban. Not only from Nick Saban, but the good people that he was around in that building, and a lot of trial and error. He has never had a quarterback that hasn't been successful. He took Blake Sims, was a running back at Alabama, and Blake Sims was one of the top passers in the conference that year. He has never been in a situation with an offense where he hasn't been able to find some way to be successful. And so that's why I consider him a guru, is because, yes, he was put in those positions before he was ready. But I also think that he had to learn those lessons the hard way. You know, there's some people that you can talk to them and tell them and teach them. It doesn't matter. They have to learn. And I think that was for Lane Kiffin to crash and burn miserably at those early stops is what has helped him become one of the best coaches in college football.
Yeah, I mean that's a great point. Just the evolution of this guy. I mean, when you first see him, you know, USC, Tennessee, even the Raiders. I mean, I'll give him a little bit of slack with the Raiders. I mean, that's just a terribly run kind of program to begin with. So I don't think it's 100% fair to use his time in the pros. But, you know, point well taken. In college, the early years, it was a clown show with him. And to think he comes out, and personally, as an Alabama fan, when Saban hired him, I was like, oh, God, we are set, because Saban has finally evolved offensively enough to hire this guy who systematically changed Alabama's offensive philosophy, you know, really forever, honestly, because we had to change. Good stuff.
And then you think about it too, Chad. Not only did you have him in that offensive coaching room, you also had Sark. You also had Bill O'Brien. You can say whatever you want about Bill O'Brien as a head coach. That guy can teach and coach the passing game. He's a very good passing game coach. I mean, I disagree philosophically with some stuff, but you know, that's neither here nor there. But I mean, those are some very good offensive minds on one coaching staff together. And you wonder why Alabama was so successful under Saban. Yeah, I mean, Nick had a lot to do with that, obviously, but the people around him, you know, and Nick being a relentless recruiter. And then you bring guys like Kirby Smart in. You bring these guys in who buy into that whole philosophy. And and then to, like I said, to watch Kiffin's transformation over the years has been nothing short of phenomenal. I mean, I really, even as a Bama fan, I hope Lane Kiffin gets a championship, because there are so many people out there bashing him and talking bad about him because he left Ole Miss and the way he did. But when these players hop in the portal and go to 4 teams in 4 years, or 3 teams in 3 years, nobody bats an eye. The players, we got to take the players got to have the freedom to move. Well, when the coaches have freedom to move, that's a bad thing, but the players can have freedom to move, and the players can totally go back on deals and hop around and withdraw, and it doesn't matter. They can commit here and enroll and then leave, and it doesn't matter. It's okay because he wanted more money. But when a coach moves, it's like, oh, he's doing that to the players, and he lied to the players. I mean, come on, just stop the nonsense. I really want to see him win a title, because I think Lane Kiffin is so good for modern college football. He's the best troll in the game. Nobody better. He knows how to work the portal. His name's always in the news. He's a lightning rod, and he's a damn good football coach on top of that.
Preaching to the choir here. All right, let's move on to Pig Suey. Arkansas with their new coach, Coach Silverfield. What you got on him?
Okay, so here's another guy. I wrote down a few things on him. I'm not as familiar with Silverfield, but I mean he's coached at the college and the pro level. He also coached at the high school level. He went 1-9 as a high school head coach. Just throwing that out there. Now I tell you, there's something I really don't like about him, and the fact that in his time at Memphis, he was 50-25. And you say, well, that's pretty good. Every year he was there, they had one of the 3 best rosters in the conference every year. And most years they had the best roster. And he never played for a conference championship, not once. And his record against teams with an above 500 record was 12-20. So yeah, so now he's going to step into big water of playing in the SEC, where he doesn't have the roster advantage like he had at Memphis. However, I do think this guy okay. This guy, we put him in the grunt category. Started off in high school, took some lumps, worked his way up. Like I said, he's been in college and pro. He worked with the Vikings and the Detroit Lions. He started coaching at the Bowles High School in Jacksonville. There's an Atlanta Brave, Chad, who most famously went to the Bowles High School. Who was that?
Brave?
No. But one of the most famous Braves of all time.
Well, if it's in Florida, it's got to be Chipper.
Chipper Jones. He went to Bowles. That's very good. It was in Jacksonville.
Captain of the football team, I believe.
Yes, sir. Now, my projection for Arkansas this year, if they go 4-8, I'm projecting to go 4-8 looking at their schedule. If they can somehow manage to go 6-6, I would consider that nothing short of miraculous. His offensive coordinator is Tim Cramsey, and his defensive coordinator is Ron Roberts, which Ron Roberts spent time in Auburn and Florida. I like those guys that have kind of been around the SEC and understand football in the SEC. But Tim Cramsey, he's coming from Memphis with Ryan Silverfield. So Silverfield was one of those guys that he kind of worked his way up, got to Memphis, eventually became the offensive coordinator when Mike Norvell left and went to Florida State. He ended up becoming the head coach, and it's going to be a tough proposition for them in Arkansas. I mean, their schedule's brutal. Just looking at their schedule, I mean, they play. Well, first off, they play at Utah. That's going to be tough. And then they play Georgia, at Texas A&M, Tennessee, at Vanderbilt, Missouri, at Auburn, South Carolina, at Texas, and LSU. I mean, they've got a couple of winnable games on here: Tulsa, North Alabama. But I mean, they finished the season in a row with no bye, where they play Missouri, at Auburn, South Carolina, at Texas, and LSU. So, that's a gauntlet of a run for them. And especially you're looking at a team this year that they had 10 NFL graded players on their roster. Almost half of their players, NFL draftable, and they won 2 games. And every one of those guys is gone. They're either going to the draft or they jumped in the portal. This could be a disaster for Arkansas. This really could. Or because I went back and looked at Arkansas the last 5 years, they've had at least 5 players with draftable grades every year, even when they haven't been very good. Which tells me that they can go get some players, but they're going to have to do a better job on in-game and making adjustments. And I really saw that in the Notre Dame game this past year. I mean, they were going blow for blow with Notre Dame, and then about 7 minutes left to go in the half, they just fell apart. I mean, it was a 14-10 game, and they had the football. And then I think there was a turnover, and then a touchdown, and then a stop, and then another quick touchdown, and then they just folded up shop. So like I said, I'm projecting to go 4-8, which actually 4-8 doubles their win total. So let's try to take a positive here. I've got them doubling their win total from this past year, but still not making a bowl. But I think if they got to 6-6 in Silverfield's first year, I think that would be an accomplishment.
I mean, 6-6, that means you tripled your win total.
Yeah.
And if you're able to triple your win total, that means the year before you were god awful.
Yeah. Well, the quarterback they got the quarterback they got there, the KJ Jackson kid, he's a very highly touted kid, 4-star.
Yeah.
Just very inexperienced. I mean, we don't know. We don't know what we don't know about him. Like I said, they lost a lot of talent from last year, a lot. And so we'll see what happens in Fayetteville.
All right, let's move on to our next team. Hotty toddy, gosh almighty, who the heck are we? No, seriously, who are we? We've had several different mascots over the past 15 years. On to Ole Miss, Pete Golding. Us Bama fans know him very well. Actually, I think they did very well in the playoff, considering you lose your head coach before the playoff. What you got on Golding, my friend?
Well, I'm not big on Golding. It just some of the decision making, the defense, we've seen it over the years. We saw it at Bama. Even in 2020, that Bama team is as good as they were. I mean, that defense was decent. That was not one of Nick Saban's better defenses. That was probably the worst defense that Alabama won a championship with. But that
Easily.
offense was so stellar. I mean, it just they were nobody was going to beat them because they could just go score for score with anybody. It didn't matter. His offensive coordinator is John David Baker. He was promoted from assistant offensive coordinator and offensive line coach at East Carolina. He was in 2024, he was a Broyles Award nominee. Now, the one thing that I do like about that, the familiarity. Now we know Trinidad Chambliss is going to be back. You got Keywan Lacey back. So even though Charlie Weiss is gone, Lane Kiffin's gone, there is still somebody there. I think Golding did a good job promoting there. But Pete Golding, again, there's so many unknowns with him. And yes, he won 2 playoff games. He beat the Georgia Bulldogs. They were within a minute of going to the national championship game. But you watch, and it's kind of the same, kind of sitting back, just kind of taking the blows on defense, not attacking enough. I understand personnel dictates some of that. I get that. But there's times where, I mean, you can't just sit there and take a death by 1,000 cuts. There's times where you got to try to make something happen. And until I see a shift in Golding doing that, of all of these hires, this is probably my next to least in next to last place as far as ones that I'm excited about. But it's going to be totally different now because now he's going to run the entire off season. He's going to run spring practice. He's going to run the summer session. Everything goes through him now. So there's no more crutch to fall back on. It's totally on him. And we'll see.
Okay.
We're back. The one thing I will tell you about Golding, where he was really good at Alabama and why Nick Saban kept him, he was a good recruiter. However, recruiting is not nearly as important as it used to be. To me, just the way modern college football is, you better work the portal. You better work the portal hard. And they've had some things happen in the off season with the new players coming in, getting more money than the players that were there and causing friction there. And then you have the whole Trinidad Chambliss Deuce Knight. But I am willing to bet you Deuce Knight is leaving in May. I would be willing to put money on that when that window opens and players are allowed to just unenroll and then go somewhere and enroll. Yeah, I know the portal's closed, but that's going to happen in May. Watch the chaos that happens in May, and I will be willing to bet you Deuce Knight is going to leave because he knows he sees the writing on the wall, and he's going to feel probably stabbed in the back because that's the way everything is now. Everybody gets their feelings hurt. And rather than stay a year and learn with one of the best quarterbacks in college football, he's going to pack it up and leave. I'd be willing to bet on it.
Yeah. Podcast, a couple of podcasts ago, we kind of hit on that during our rivals segment with Trinidad Deuce. Personally, I don't think he's going to. I don't see how with today's college football, why would you stay anyway? All right, let's move on. It's time for the Florida Gators. Coach Sumrall, what you got on that?
Okay, so of the coaches we're going to talk about in the SEC, this is the number one. This is the number one hire that I'm most excited about. John Sumrall, as a head coach, has gone 43-12. Guy can flat out coach. He's from Huntsville. He went to Grissom High School. He played linebacker at Kentucky. He went to Kentucky as a GA. He's kind of bounced around. He went to Tulane. He left. He went to Troy. He was a head coach at Troy. Left Troy. Now he went to the head coach. He was the head coach at Tulane. And I loved his blatant honesty this year. He said, well, we're not a playoff team. We shouldn't be in the playoff. But we're here, and we're going to give it our best shot, but we're not a playoff team. I firmly believe that before his time is through, Sumrall will win a national championship. Of all the hires that were made this year, I think if there's one team that I would say could make the playoff this year in year one, it would be Florida. They have a ton of talent coming back. He's a no-nonsense kind of guy. He believes in physicality. You better believe he played inside linebacker, and he understands about the run game and physicality and running the ball down the hill. He's been in and around the SEC for a number of years. So his staff that he put together, let me check my handy-dandy notes here. Buster Faulkner. He was at Georgia Tech, and they brought in Aaron Philo. Now, what I like about Buster Faulkner likes to blend the air raid concepts with the run game with the quarterback. And we saw that a ton with Haynes King last year. So think Haynes King, Aaron Philo, but with much better talents surrounding him. Okay. Also, just so you'll know that the air raid offense, okay, there's only a few that still run the true air raid, but it actually started at Valdosta State with Hal Mumme. And he actually went to Kentucky and had some success at Kentucky, and he kind of bounced around to several places. But out of that coaching tree came Coach Mike Leach. And then he are the Pirate. So what he's doing is he's blending some of those air raid concepts. Especially you can see the air raid concepts. One of the things the air raid likes to do is you're going to send somebody deep on every play and somebody across the field on every play. So there's going to be a crossing route on almost every play. It's hard to defend. They make you defend the whole length and width of the field. That's where the air raid gets you. But there's a reason why no air raid quarterback or air raid system has ever won a national championship, because there's no run game. There's no physicality to the run game. And when you get down in a compressed area, it gets tougher exponentially. Mike Leach figured that out. His last couple of years at Mississippi State, they ran the ball a lot, and he still ran his air raid concepts, but he made much more of a conscious effort to run the football, and that's the same thing that Buster Faulkner is going to do as well. Let's see. He was an analyst at Georgia, so he won the 2 years they won national championships. He was an analyst at Georgia. So again, here's one of those. Here's one of those. Talking about Buster Faulkner. Again, the guy that's very well traveled, and and has a good feel for the game. Also, he's seen a lot of football in the SEC. The defensive coordinator is Brad White. Now, I love the guys that spend some time in the NFL. I just do. There's so much that goes on. I mean, just as far as the attention to detail, because and the reason is because everything in the NFL is pretty much even. Now, in college, there's always a disparity in the rosters. There's a disparity in the talent on the teams, and that's why on this show we talk a lot about strength of schedule and strength of wins versus strength of losses. I mean, for example, if you play in the NFL, there's not a lot that separates. Some of y'all might think this is far fetched, but there's not a lot that separates the Cleveland Browns from the LA Rams. There's really not. Both of those teams are loaded with talent. It's just the Browns are missing something. And if they had that one little something, they would be obviously quarterback play. Let's start there. But again, if you parcel them out, player for player, position by position, there's really not that much difference. So when you win games in the NFL, hey, you win in advance. You win in advance. That's the way it is. But in college football, I will go to my grave and say that a win, say you're Alabama, a win over the Florida Gators is far bigger than a win over Colorado State. Those are two completely different programs with completely different types of players that recruit different, that have different facilities, different everything. And that's one of the things that we try to impress upon on the show about the different levels that there are actually in college football. So I love those guys in the NFL because they really find the minute details because that's what they're looking for to gain an advantage. And so here, now you take a guy that they're probably going to have a roster advantage over a lot of teams that they play. And then he also has that knowledge being a defensive coordinator. He was with the Colts from 2012 to 2017. He was also the DC at Kentucky under Mark Stoops. Him and John Sumrall coached together at Kentucky. So there's your connection. And I like both of his hires. And see, for me, it's not just the head coach, it's the coordinators. Okay. This is one of the best head coach OC DCs in the SEC. And I stand on that.
Yeah. And just to hold it here just for a second, you said you think Florida can win a national championship with Sumrall, correct?
Yes.
You think Kiffin will win a national championship at LSU, correct?
Correct.
So what was one of the best non-traditional rivals you had in the 2000s, 2010s, LSU and Florida?
Oh, yeah. And I'll
both
tell you
getting
why,
new coaches. Yeah.
That's always been one of the best rivalries because of just the raw talent those teams have always had throughout the years on their rosters. You look at Florida, you look at LSU. Between the two teams, they have about 20 draftable players right now. And between them, they won 12 games this past year, which just shows you how poorly the two teams were coached. Even though they had bad teams win-loss record, there's tons of talent on those teams. Both of those teams are always loaded with talent, even when they're not very good record-wise.
Yeah. So you think about that. They play if they played in the regular season, you could play each other again in the SEC championship game. Then you could play yourself again a third time in the playoff.
Mm-hmm.
And if those two programs are as good as we all think they can be, I mean, that could be a war between LSU and Florida.
Absolutely. Everybody wants to talk about all the money that Texas is spending, and rightfully so. I was looking at some balance sheets the other day and then looking at expenditures for schools. And I mean, Texas, with all their spending and all they're doing, they had a surplus of $165 million. I mean, that's crazy. Texas A&M, they had a surplus of I forget what it was. It was 40 million, 75 million. And people want to talk about that, but you better not sleep on LSU and Florida, because even though they may not have those kinds of balance sheets, they're spending lots of money, but moreover, they're spending smart money.
Yeah. So you said that a couple of Florida coaches coached at Kentucky, which is going to segue in to our next team in the Bluegrass State, the Commonwealth of Kentucky, the Wildcats, with their new coach, Coach Stein. Bo, what you got on this one?
Now, Coach Stein here, he's a guru. Okay, he's only been in the coaching field about I think it's about, I have about 10 years, 12 years. He started, he was a quarterback at Louisville, and he started coaching in 2013. And 13 years in the coaching, and again, he was a GA at that time in 2013 is when he started. So he played football up at Louisville from 2009 to 2012. I think it's 2009 to 12, and then started coaching in 13. And so that first year he was just a GA. So, I mean, you're talking about 13 years. You've got a major college football job. So this is what I'm talking about. One of these guys identified very young as one of those innovative art types. I mean, he also was at that, but this too, I like this too. He was at Texas Lake Travis High School. Okay, so he coached in the high school ranks. He coached at UTSA. Now, why is that important? This is why I'm gonna tell you a quick little story. I was at a coaching clinic at Alabama. The running backs coach was Sparky Woods, and he was telling the story about how some of the best coaches he's ever talked to in his entire life were high school coaches. You know, I'm sitting here kind of thinking, like, well, dude, you coach at the University of Alabama. How could you sit here and say this? And his explanation was, we're Alabama. We can go anywhere in the country and get any running back we want. He said, you have to play with the player that's in your district, and you got to make it work. And not only do you have to do that, but you've got to teach all day, grade papers. You don't get paid squat. Your coaching supplement's not very good. And you work, 15 to 18 hours a day, and then you do it all over again. And he said some of the most innovative people that I've ever been around were high school coaches. Think about this too. Nate Oates, Alabama's basketball coach, was coaching basketball. I think it was our high school basketball in just outside of the city of Detroit, I think is where he was. And then, 10 years later, he's the head coach at Alabama, or 10, 12 years later, whatever it was, he's the head coach at Alabama. So a lot of these guys do get their start. And I'll tell you why I like that is because you have the coaches that learn how to coach with deficiencies are your best coaches. And when I say deficiencies, again, when you're coaching in high school, you can't just go anywhere in the country and get whoever you want. You get who comes to your school. And you have to try to find a way to make that piece fit into the puzzle. And I would also tell you, I learned the most I ever learned coaching was when I was our head freshman football coach. You think about that, you've only got one grade of players. You got ninth graders. That's it. And you have to try to figure everything out basically with no off season. You get them in the summer, you work them, but you've never actually seen them play, right? You don't have a full off season with them and get to watch them for a season and then put them somewhere. You basically gotta figure out everything on the fly. And these kind of guys that coach in high school, that coach at these smaller schools, I love these kind of guys because these guys understand that, and they understand about the grind, and they understand about making those pieces fit, figuring out a way to make it fit. And Will Stein probably seems like one of those kind of guys. Now his offensive and defensive coordinators, let's see here. His offensive coordinator is Joe Sloan, who was at LSU from 22 to 25. So also, he helped. Why is that important? He helped develop Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels was so bad at Arizona State. The story I heard on him was that when he decided to transfer, a bunch of the players went in the locker room. He was so bad, they packed up all his stuff in a box and packed it up for him and set it outside. He goes to LSU, wins 10 games, beats Alabama, wins the Heisman Trophy, and he's top pick in the draft. But Joe Sloan had a big handle in developing him. And so he's got another good one coming in, Kenny Minchie, that highly touted guy, transfer from Notre Dame, and so he'll get to help develop him. So I like that. I like that hire too. Again, you're looking at a guy with SEC experience, and his defensive coordinator, Jay Bateman. Okay, here's one of those guru or one of those grunt kind of guys. He was at Army, Ball State, Elon, and Siena. And this is what I'm talking about, learning to be able to coach with deficiencies. Another time I was watching a coaching clinic with not Fisher DeBerry, Troy Calhoun, who's the Air Force coach. And that was one of the first things he said. He said, if you can't coach with deficiencies, you can't coach at the Air Force Academy. He said, we lead the country in horse collar tackles. He said, we break more long runs and get caught from behind than any team in America. Because the point is those service academy kids, they're not really being recruited by anybody. He said they might have 2 or 3 kids that get an offer from like Wyoming or somewhere like that. But, they're not beating out Alabama for those skill players. Okay. So he was another guy that talked about that I heard talk about learning to coach with deficiencies and work within the confines, figuring out something that your players can do where they can be successful. And I think this Jay Bateman guy seems like one of those guys again. And when he was at Army, he was also up for the Broyles Award. He was a finalist, which is for, assistant coach of the year. So he was also an assistant at Texas A&M in 2025. So here's a guy coached at the bottom. I would imagine, no offense to Siena, but I would imagine they don't probably have the best of everything at Siena. I don't really would consider them a football power, but then he goes and he coaches his way up and goes to Texas A&M and helps Texas A&M get into the college football playoff this past year. So again, another guy that understands coaching football in the SEC that's worked his way up.
All right. Well, let's finish this segment up. I can't believe I'm saying this. I don't want to lose my Alabama card, but we saved the best for last. In-state school, the Auburn Tigers. Alex Golish steps in first year. Bo, what you got?
Alex Golish is exactly what Auburn needs. In 1984, he was born in Moscow, Russia. Yes. His family escaped the Soviet Union, comes to the United States. I mean, this is truly like living the American dream. He gets out of all that madness, comes over here, gets into the coaching ranks in, I think it was 2002. Let me check my handy dandy notes here. Alex Golish. He started his coaching career at Westerville Central High School in Ohio. He was born in Moscow and raised in Brooklyn. Okay. So that just sounds like a tough guy to me. Like, just has that tough persona, that tough guy mentality, which is really what Auburn needs. He was a student assistant in 2004 at Ohio State and worked his way up, and his first head coaching job was at South Florida. And then while at South Florida, let's see, he also had coaching stints at Northern Illinois, Oklahoma State, Toledo, Illinois, Iowa State, Central Florida, Tennessee, and then eventually the USF head coach. So he coached for over 20 years before he got his first shot as a head coach. So, you're talking about paying your dues in the coaching ranks. Let's see, his coordinators he brought Joel Gordon with him from South Florida. And he's also, and this is going to be great for the Auburn faithful out there. This guy, Gordon, is known as a quarterback developer. That is the two areas that Auburn has lacked the most in the last, I don't know, probably really since Malzahn left, is quarterback, head coach. And it seems as though that Joel Gordon is one of those guys to develop quarterbacks. They average 450 yards and 35 points a game there. Now, in another smart move by Golish, he retained DJ Durkin. Durkin's been all over the place. I mean, he's coached at Michigan. He's coached at Texas A&M, Ole Miss, Florida, and then, of course, the DC at Auburn. Auburn they had the number 30 total defense in the country last year. So as you can see, the defense was not the problem. They were number 13 against the run and 30 overall. So you get somebody in there that can develop the offense and have some toughness, a little bit of edge about them. Auburn's going to be right there in the mix every year. I mean, they've got money to spend in the portal. Their financials actually look pretty good. I looked at probably 8 or 10 teams in the SEC, and they're all pretty good. I mean, I was looking at the Big Ten, and I was like, man, yeah, they got all this money and they've got these donors, but they're running. I mean, between all the schools in the Big Ten, they're running probably like a $6 billion deficit. USC themselves is running like on a $3.2 billion deficit. I think Auburn was like, last year they were like minus $5 million, and I think this year they recouped some of that, and they were actually on the positive side this year. But and that's also gonna help Auburn moving forward. You don't understand how bad these balance sheets are. Like Northwestern, they had to take $100 million out of their the school fund to try to pay, just so that they wouldn't collapse, so they could stay afloat. And these schools are taking out all these loans and all this stuff. And I mean, we keep saying it on the show all the time that the system is not good. But Auburn's financials look good. Arkansas's look good. I'm just going back and remembering Florida. They broke even for the first time since COVID, so their balance sheet is getting fixed. Kentucky's looked pretty good. LSU's was good. So now you have these coaches that have been put in place, and I've been saying this since the inception of this show. The coaching in the SEC has been subpar. No more. The coaching in the SEC, these guys can coach. The SEC has always been a recruiting league. Go recruit, get the best players, because they can't go anywhere. Well, now they can. Now you got to be able to coach. So now you can see that a lot of these schools in the SEC are shifting, and they're going out and hiring quality coaches, not just good recruiters. And these head coaches are getting top-notch coordinators too. So it ought to be a very, very, very competitive, interesting year in the SEC, especially with the SEC going to 9 conference games.
It's going to be fun to watch next year for sure.
Hey, right, and I'll tell you one other thing. Alabama's taking heat for trying to buy out of the Ohio State series. If I was the SEC commissioner, I would flat tell every SEC team, buy out of every other Power 4 game. And here's why. Because the committee has plainly said they do not value the strength of schedule. They do not value strength of wins. All they want is W's and L's. That's all they're looking for, is W's and L's. So all of the non-SEC people have complained, well, USCC, you only play 8 games and we play 9. Okay, fine. We'll play 9, and then we'll just keep all our money too. And then you can have your 9th game, and then we'll have our 9th game, and we won't give you we won't play that Chick-fil-A game to start the season, and we won't go play these big neutral site games to start the season. We won't do the big home and homes. We'll just buy out of it. You can have it. And we'll follow that Big Ten model that's been put in place. Play 3 surefire wins, and then just play your conference schedule.
Yeah, I mean there's really no point in it now, especially with the expanded playoff, and there's
expanded conferences. You got plenty of good teams you can play in your conference. Like I said, the committee has clearly shown they don't value the strength of wins. So why even do that to yourself? I mean, why even put yourself in that position because, for example, take Texas. People if they don't play Ohio State, and let's suppose they play Colorado State week 1,
UTSA.
I think they actually did play UTSA.
They did play them. Yeah.
But just take Ohio State off the schedule and put East Carolina, put any non-Power 4 team in there, and they win that game. And then even if they lose to Florida, it doesn't matter. But of course, if you look at the other way, don't lose to Florida, and then you don't have that problem. But again, it's just like I said a few minutes ago, looking at Florida, half of their starters are graded by the NFL to be drafted. Florida had a really good roster. They just bad coaching.
Yep. All right, Mob, let us know in the comments about all these coaches we discussed: LSU, Arkansas, Ole Miss, Florida, Kentucky, and Auburn. Give us a like, give us a comment. Let Bo what he hit on. Let Bo know what he hit on, and please let him know what he missed on. All right. Before we get into some comments Bo would like to address, let's do a little recap of some of the other sports that kind of went on over the weekend. Alabama gets their 6th straight SEC basketball win as they win in Baton Rouge over LSU, and Auburn gets off the schneid with that was actually a bigger win than Bama's was. Big home win over Kentucky to kind of get them off the bubble. I think that win will probably get them last 4 in right now, if not maybe just a shade bit higher. And man, how about the USA hockey teams, both men and women's, win gold? If that don't get you fired up, nothing will. All right, Bo.
First time since 1980 that we've won gold in hockey. And I'm not a hockey fan, but that's cool, man. I mean, that's when we have our athletes on the world stage like that and they do that, man, that's awesome.
All right, Bo, I want to give you the last word here. You got some stuff you wanted to address, so the floor is yours.
Yeah, so somebody had on one of my shorts, they made a comment about the whole Trinidad Chambliss thing, and they were like, well, he missed a whole year and he should have gotten a medical. Guys, our stance on this show is very simple across the board. 5 years to play 4. It doesn't, even with the medical, he still had 5 years to play 4. Why is he getting a 6th year? There should be no 6-year players, no super seniors. The COVID nonsense is over with. There should be no 6th-year players ever. I'm sorry that he had tonsillitis and he had a respiratory issue and he couldn't play in 2022, but he still had 5 years to play 4. And we're consistent on that. We're consistent with that on this show. Is 5 to play 4, no 6 years. Bama's got a 7th-year guy. We don't like it. We stated repeatedly we didn't like the Charles Bediako thing. Didn't like it. I don't like any of it. Okay, but that's the way it is now. And the other thing we were talking about the Trinidad Chambliss thing, and I was wearing my North Dakota State shirt, but on the screen you couldn't see the lettering. All you could see was the gold. So, and if you'll notice behind me, there's Bama pictures behind me. And so somebody on the show said, yeah, you must be an LSU fan. And I just put on their editor's note, check all the Bama pics in the background. Come on, guys. I would like to think our audience is smarter than that. Okay. I would like to think our audience can look at Antonio Langham in the background there, intercepting the ball and run it back for a touchdown. Okay.
Well, to be fair, the guy might have been born in the late 90s or something. Who knows?
I don't know. That picture, that Langham picture with the interception against Florida, it's pretty plain. I mean, you can see that pretty good on the show. So all I get it, guys, is don't be so quick with the accusations because it's something you don't like to hear. That's what we do here. We have these hard conversations. We just don't sit there and do fluff and go, this is great and this is not great. And I like this and I don't like that. We give you the how and the why. And that's what I love about this show is we're gonna dive into it just like we dove into today. We dove into coordinators, who's a grunt, who's a guru, why we're calling these people this. And again, in no negative connotation whatsoever. Everybody has a different path. Okay?
Yeah.
So
hey, and I'll end on this. I think Alabama should sue the NCAA and let Bediako he should be playing the rest of the year next year. He's got 2 years of eligibility left. Never got drafted. Never played in one professional game. However, Alabama is a much better team without him, so I'm glad he's not there anymore. And that's been proven when he was in there. They weren't as good, but when he's out, I believe they're a better team. That's all I got. So, guys, that'll do it for this edition of the 4th and 31 podcast, the inaugural edition of Coach Talk. I'm Chad Bullock saying goodbye for Coach Bo, and we will see you later.